Welcome everyone to the very first episode of the Fair Catch Podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Calderon. This is a no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point NFL podcast where I'm going to recap and discuss this past Sunday's action around the league in detail. And later on in the show, we're going to talk stats, projections, rankings, how each team looks heading into Week 7, and a lot more. So without skipping a beat, let's jump into the 60-second Sunday recap and then discuss all the games in further detail. Giants on course for another abysmal season, getting blown out at home this past Thursday to the Philadelphia Eagles. Steelers sneaking one out in the jungle, courtesy of a late fourth quarter touchdown to Antonio Brown. Houston's winning close football games. Fumble City in Miami. Come on, Jordan Howard and Kenyon Drake. Come on, guys. We had a snooze fest out in London. Only thing to see in that game was Wembley Stadium. Second half rally falls short for Carolina. And the Rams, boy, they played a buckle your chin strap hard-nosed physical game out in the freezing cold at Mile High Stadium. Tennessee looked dazed. Got shut out at home. We'll talk about that game in a bit. Blowout in Dallas. Are the Jags overrated? Jets piling on points in second straight blowout win against Indianapolis. And a shootout at the OK Corral between Kansas City and New England. 83 points scored in that one. Now let's talk about some of the games in detail. In fact, all the games. We're going to start out in Minneapolis, where they took on Arizona, winning that one 27-17. Where's the Vikings' run game? They haven't had a touchdown on the ground in the first 5 weeks. I think this is a big part to Dalvin Cook being sidelined with an injury for most of the season. But Latavius Murray finally gets a rushing touchdown. The dynamic passing game of the Vikings has just been dynamic all year. Adam Thielen on the day, 11 catches, 123 yards, and a touchdown. Third straight double-digit reception game for Adam. 6 straight 100-yard receiving game. And 4 touchdowns on the year. He's already been targeted 81 times. I mean, this guy is on pace to set some serious records this year. Stephon Diggs and Kyle Rudolph to complement that pass game. I mean, this team, they could be contenders again. They fell short last year to Philadelphia, but if they can get the run game going, defense, tightens up, things could look good for Minnesota. But, the Arizona's, their struggles just continue. I mean, new quarterback Josh Rosen just does not look comfortable. He's had some sightings of looking good, but for the most part, nothing shy of 3 wins on the year for the Cardinals. And David Johnson, hello? I mean, this team can't get anything going. On the ground, through the air. We think of David Johnson. We think of 2016 leading the NFL in yards from scrimmage. But, boy, this offensive line. And if you watch any Arizona games, I hope you're seeing what I'm seeing. This team had a chance to turn a corner in Minnesota this week, coming off a win in San Fran last week. But it was a close one at the half. Minnesota led 13-10. Minnesota was 9.5-point favorites going into the game, but Minnesota broke the game open in the second half and won 27-17. Going to head out to Cleveland, talk about the hot-streaking Chargers blowing out the Browns 38-14. Cleveland, surprisingly, how many years it's been since I said this, they've been undefeated at home coming into Sunday's game. They have a solid group of young receivers in Higgins, Antonio Callaway, Jarvis Landry, reception machine. And have they found a future back in Carlos Hyde? He looks good when he's getting value. He's getting volume. He's getting carries. He's getting yards. The defense looks solid before Sunday. And Chargers really look to be contenders in the AFC. Only 2 losses. Kansas City and the Rams. Besides that, Chargers have looked great. You can't talk about the Chargers without talking about Melvin Gordon. Without doubt, one of the best complete backs in the NFL. I mean, he's got 9 touchdowns on the year. 3-to-1 rush attempt to reception ratio. I mean, this is what you want from a complete running back. They utilize him in the pass game. They feed him the ball, and he scores. I mean, what more do you want? This team is on pace, 11-5 possibly. Might sneak in the playoffs at a wild card. Chiefs probably going to run away with the AFC West, but we'll talk more about that. Browns just couldn't find receivers in the first half. Tyrell Williams, wow, monster half for the Chargers. 2 touchdowns on 3 catches for 118 yards. Game really got out of hand early in the second half. The last thing I'll say about this game is Hugh Jackson, he needs to go. Going to go down south. Got the Bills taking on the Texans. Bills fall short in that one, 13-20. Is Houston a possible playoff team? This AFC South just looks so unpredictable. You got the Jags getting blown out back-to-back weeks. Colts can't win a game. 1 win on the year. And the Titans. Boy, I don't get it. I just don't. They're really lacking a run game, though, the Texans, that is. Alfred Blue and Lamar Miller just not really getting the job done on the ground. And what's the deal with Buffalo? This is a team a few weeks back blew out Minnesota at home. They held Kirk Cousins to negative fantasy points through 3 quarters in that one. And they snuck out an ugly, ugly win against the Titans last week in that snooze fest of a field goal game. Deshaun Watson throws his 6th pick of the year late in that first half. Buffalo was held scoreless at halftime, but they held DeAndre Hopkins to only 5 catches for 63 yards on the day. He did score a touchdown. Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills run game for a quick second. You got Shady McCoy. Okay, we all know what kind of career he's had. More noticeably in Philadelphia than in Buffalo, but nonetheless, you expect production out of the guy. He hasn't scored a touchdown on the ground all season. There was rumors of him earlier in the week going to Philly in a trade. That got shut down. Buffalo finally got on the board with a field goal, with first drive of the second half in that game. And Peterman came in for an injured Josh Allen late in that game. Unfortunately for Bills fans, throws a pick 6 late, under 2 minutes, when the game was tied 13-13, and Houston comes away with the win, 20-13. Now we head up north a little bit to the jungle. Pittsburgh Steelers taking on division rivals Cincinnati Bengals. Pittsburgh coming away with a controversial win, 28-21. Steelers got off to a rough start this year. They really looking to get back on track this Sunday after manhandling Atlanta last week. And Cincy really, even falling short this week, they look like a great all-around football team. Possibly top 5 in the NFL. Tyler Boyd really stepped up. 2 TDs in the first half. And he's been big this year for the Red Rifle and the Bengals. He's really solidified himself as a number 2 wideout. Second to A.J. Green, of course. This was a gritty game at halftime. It's 14-14, as to be expected when these 2 division rivals collide. Cincinnati's defense came up big, boy. Big time goal line stand on the 1-yard line midway through the third quarter. This game looked like it might be heading to OT. Bengals scored under 2 minutes in the fourth quarter on a Joe Mixon 5-yard touchdown run to take a 21-20 lead. Steelers go ahead with, like I said before, a controversial touchdown with 10 seconds left. So this is controversial for the main reason. Antonio Brown broke away on a slant route for about 45 yards. I'm not exactly sure on how many yards it was, but scored with about 10 seconds left. Wide receiver who was lined up next to Antonio Brown, Hunter, just jumped out of the snap, just blocking downfield. And, you can't do that. These pick plays, it's such a gray area for refs to call. I understand that. But when the man is not even attempting to run a route and is just setting a block to free up Antonio Brown to hit the Jets on a slant, you got to throw the flag there. He just blocked from the snap. Refs missed it. No one was happy about that in Cincy. And Pittsburgh comes away with the win, 28-21. Head down south, had an interesting game. Chicago at Miami. Visiting Bears fell short 28-31 late in overtime to the Dolphins. Brock Osweiler gets the start versus the Bears with Tannehill sidelined with an injury. They just had lack of a run game all year. And, Frank Gore came out running the ball at 100 yards on the ground, the wily old vet that he is. This is a low-scoring game at halftime. Dolphins had a 7-0 lead. The Bears came storming out of the locker room to outscore Miami 21-6 in the third. Just went back and forth a lot in the second half. Wound up going to OT. Bunch of fumbles. Jordan Howard for the Bears, fumbling on the 1-yard line, which might have sealed the game. Unfortunately, Miami takes over. We all know what happened in that one. The Bears with a late first half pick, The defense for the Bears, 5th straight game with an interception. This defense looks great. Definitely looked like a playoff team. Unfortunate loss this week, but definitely looked like a playoff team. Miami tied the game midway through the fourth quarter. Albert Wilson, hello. Had a ridiculous touchdown for Miami to tie the game late in the fourth. You guys got to check that touchdown out if you haven't seen it already. This turned out to an overtime shootout. This really turned out to be one. Kenyon Drake fumbles on the 1-yard line in overtime. Where was Frank Gore? This was my problem. Where was Frank Gore getting the goal line carry? You haven't had a run game all year. The man has 100 yards on the ground, eating up turf, eating it up. Trusty veteran, one of the best to ever run the ball. And you give it to Kenyon Drake. Thank God Chicago didn't score, and you guys went down the field, kicked like a 47-yard game-winning field goal. But boy, you're not going to go places giving the ball to Kenyon Drake on the 1-yard line over Frank Gore. That was 6 total turnovers in this game. It got kind of ugly. It was 3 for each team, and Miami comes away with the win. And we talk about Tampa Bay at Atlanta. I mean, this was, beside the last play of the game, which we'll talk about in a second, this is just a dumb game. It was a shootout, as to be expected. The 2 absolute worst scoring defenses in the NFL. Atlanta's got a banged-up secondary. Tampa Bay just gives up a ridiculous amount of points every week. Atlanta jumped out to a really quick 21-6 lead. And Jameis Winston, his first start of the year, 2 picks inside the Atlanta 5-yard line. Atlanta really led for most of this game. The defense actually came up big to stop a final drive by Tampa Bay. Mike Evans. We talk about Mike Evans. A lot of people thought this might be a breakout year for him if Jameis Winston was going to be the starter over Fitzpatrick. Him and Jameis have really formed the connection over the years, but he was held to only 4 catches, 58 yards. But Jameis did throw TDs to 4 different receivers. He looked good in this game. He did. Tampa Bay, boy, they almost scored on a miracle hook and ladder. This just came up short on the Atlanta 4-yard line. This was an interesting play. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before. It was a design run for Jameis Winston. Ran it up to about the Atlanta 15, Atlanta 10. And just started lateraling it. And apparently it looked like it was set up for the ball to be lateraled all the way to the left side of the field to Deshaun Jackson. But he fumbled it. He might have had a chance to score. That was a really interesting play. This was just an air the ball downfield kind of game. I mean, Peyton Barber looked all right, carrying the ball 13 times for 82 yards on the ground for the Buccaneers. But they fell short 29-34. I don't know why we even have to talk about this game, but Oakland against Seattle. First London game of the year. The Raiders had 107 yards of offense in the first half. I don't know what more needs to be said. They were held scoreless until the fourth quarter. And John Gruden doesn't even look like he wants to be there. Marshawn Lynch laughing on the sideline. Derek Carr scratching his head. Anyone watching this game either fell asleep or turned it off. I mean, this game got out of hand real early. Seattle jumped out to a quick 14-0 lead. They went into half leading 17-0. You figure, okay, John Gruden, the coach that he is, give a little pep talk, get the troops rallied back up, fired up, come out of the second half storming. That wasn't the case. Oakland was held scoreless for most of the game and finally scored a rinky-dink field goal in the fourth quarter. I don't really know what's up with Oakland. They're 1-5 on the year. Only win coming against the Browns in a wild circus of a game in Week 4. Not a college football score in that one. They have played a few tight football games, but a lot is going wrong for this team. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Amari Cooper, for starters, is playing like a borderline fifth option receiver. And I don't know why Jared Cook isn't getting the looks that he needs. He's a big tight end, good route runner, strong hands, physical guy. And, we're seeing flashes here and there of vintage Marshawn Lynch, but, nothing's really sticking. Gruden looks flustered. David Carr looks flustered. Their offensive line, Seattle's pass rush was just eating up David Carr. The Raiders had 2 rookie tackles starting on the line. They just gave up a handful of sacks to Seattle's defense. Like I said, nothing really to see in this game other than Wembley Stadium blowout from the kickoff. Oakland just couldn't get anything going. Carolina heading to Washington. Fell short in that one, 17-23 to the Redskins. This was a game that I thought Carolina might actually be able to win on the road. Washington was coming off a blowout loss in New Orleans last week on Drew Brees' record-setting night. But the Skins, they just came out firing on all cylinders. Jumped out to a quick 14-0 lead in the first quarter and just pretty much held on from there. Carolina They just really got off to a shaky start. Cam didn't look comfortable. The defense didn't look comfortable. I mean, Devin Funchess, he held on a late first half touchdown to give Carolina a glimmer of hope heading into the locker room. But, Carolina's defense kind of woke up in the second half, slowed down Washington in a bit. They held them scoreless in the third quarter. You thought, okay, this might be a fourth quarter game, which it was. But the Redskins' defense came up big time to deny Cam and the Panthers a go-ahead score in the final minutes of the fourth. Just a disappointing loss for Ron Rivera and the gang after that crazy walk-off win against the Giants last week. Now we're going to talk about my favorite game of the day. Boy, the Rams taking on Denver at Mile High. This was 24 degrees at kickoff. Those snow flurries. Field was littered with snow before the game. This was the first real sign of football weather here in mid-October. Beautiful sight to see at Mile High Stadium. And, we can't talk about the Rams without mentioning Todd Gurley. 100 yards from scrimmage at the start of the second quarter. I mean, I don't know what to say. I'm running out of words to describe this man. I mean, he is a workhorse of the highest quality. We're 6 weeks through the season. He's got 11 total touchdowns from scrimmage on the year. 9 on the ground, 2 through the air. 623 yards of turf eaten up on the ground for Gurley. Saw then 21 catches for just about 250 yards. And the game plan in Denver really just seemed, Sean McVay they just wanted to keep feeding him the ball. 28 carries for 208 yards. I mean, you just don't see stuff like this every week. They wanted to control the pace of the game, and they did. They just played ground and pound football all game. Denver fans looked miserable. Had to watch it all day, and they couldn't stop it. By far the most physical game I've seen all year. Very questionable play calling for Denver. They really do have to figure out their run game fast. They want to compete in the AFC West. Phillip Lindsay, Royce Freeman. And I think one needs to take over. They got to figure that out fast, real fast. Some sparks of offense for the Broncos, but nothing was really sticking. Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas used with a receiving touchdown, but that was about it. Broncos defense looked good in the first half, though. I mean, the defensive line was disrupting Goff a lot. But like I said, the game plan seemed to be just feed the ball to Gurley, and that's how the Rams responded. I mean, Vance Joseph just looks like he's running in circles on the sideline. This Denver coaching has cost the Broncos a few games this year against the AFC leading Chiefs. Now the undefeated Rams this week. I mean, this wasn't like this was a blowout by any means. Denver was not being blown. This was a football game. This was a competitive football game. There was a few questionable coaching decisions that might have cost them the game. Very similar to what we saw a few weeks back against the Chiefs. They gave up a 2-score lead at home midway through the fourth quarter. Patrick Mahomes, it's allowed Patrick Mahomes to just march down the field. And we saw that a little bit this past Sunday against the Rams. And like I said, the Bronco fans, they just look miserable watching Todd Gurley in the freezing cold just pound the rock. And Denver's defense is just atrocious. Their run defense is absolute garbage. I mean, this is back-to-back 200-yard rushing games allowed by Denver. Last week it was the Isaiah Crowell show out in MetLife. I mean, Isaiah rushed for well over 200 yards in MetLife Stadium. And this week it was Todd Gurley. And this Denver team looked good the first 3 weeks. You figure, okay, they blew a game at home against Kansas City in week 3. They'll get back on track. Just hasn't been the case. Vance Joseph really needs to figure out what's going on with this team, and fast. We head to Tennessee now. Boy, this was an ugly game. I mean, the Ravens just came out firing on all cylinders. They were just in sync from the moment kickoff started. I mean, Joe Flacco led the Ravens on a 17-play, 9-minute drive to start the game, ending with the touchdown to Michael Crabtree. I just want to say that again. 17-play, 9-minute drive to start the game on the road. And this was a Tennessee defense that really isn't that bad at all. Baltimore had 3 third-down conversions in the first half. This is the first time they did that since 2000. They just looked in sync in every aspect. They really did. Alex Collins showing up big time in the run game, is doing his job. When his number was called, he was doing his job. A lot of hard-nosed downfield running for Alex. He's really looking to get back to form. He looked great. Didn't have a ridiculous amount of yards on the ground, but he got the yardage that they needed when his number was called, and that's what you needed from a running back. So props to Alex Collins in that one. Just an ugly game for Tennessee all around. Shut out at halftime. I mean, Derrick Henry and this Tennessee run game is just so bad. Last week out in Buffalo, you had a very low over-under in that one. Vegas thought this was going to be a low-scoring game. Both teams were going to run the ball. Yeah, they did. But Derrick Henry's not doing anything. And then you play against Baltimore, who's always played hard-nosed, physical, grown man defense. And Sunday was no exception. I mean, Derrick Henry in this run game, they just can't get anything going. Tennessee had 5 plays over the 50-yard line. One was a punt. 3 for negative yards. That was through the first 3 quarters. They gave up almost twice as many sacks as they had plays ran in opponents' territory. I mean, this was the ugliest game I've seen all year. We're going to jump into Dallas real quick. Another blowout, unfortunately. I mean, these 4 o'clock games last week were just snooze fest. Jacksonville really looking to bounce back after getting stymied against the Chiefs. Dak Prescott fumbled the ball twice in the fourth quarter, somehow recovered both. The Cowboys offense came out of the gates firing to take a 24-0 lead at halftime. This Jacksonville defense gets hyped up a lot, and I get it. They're the best pass defense in the league. I understand that. But they were getting exposed left and right. All day busted zone coverages. Couldn't contain Zeke Elliott in the Dallas run game. And they allowed Dak Prescott, a career day running the ball for 82 yards on like 11 or 12 carries. I mean, this Jacksonville offense just can't get anything going. Blake Bortles just not comfortable. He's got no one to throw the ball to. Dante Moncrief, D.D. Westbrook, Keelan Cole. I mean, I'm hoping when Leonard Fournette gets back, the offense will pick the pace back up. But like I said, I mean, their passing game, it sucks. They lost Sefarius Jenkins. It's on IR. And they just didn't give TJ Yeldon the ball enough. I mean, I get it. They were getting blown out. You kind of got to abandon the run game. But get him in the passing game. I mean, Dante Moncrief didn't catch a ball. They were down 24-0 at halftime. Dante Moncrief didn't catch a pass. And Doug Marrone, these guys got to figure something out fast. This is back-to-back blowout losses for the Jaguars. They might not make the playoffs. This AFC South is so unpredictable. I get it. Listen, great defenses win games, but you got to score. And they scored in garbage time last week against Kansas City. Should have only scored 7 points in that one. They scored 7 points against Dallas. Anyway, let's head out to MetLife. Talk about Indianapolis taking on the Jets. This is the second 40-point game of the year for the Jets. First one, week 1 against Detroit. And back-to-back home wins for the Jets against AFC opponents. Last week taking on Denver and the Colts this Sunday. Andrew Luck is averaging near 50 pass attempts a game. But, you would think with 50 pass attempts a game, they're going to score points. They are. That's just not the problem. They're just giving up too many points. And we're going to talk about their defense in just a second. It's unfortunate they lost T.Y. Hilton to a bad injury. Eric Ebron seems to be their only threat in the passing game. But they had some signs of hope. Marlon Mack looked good in his return with 89 yards on the ground, 12 carries. And these Jets, boy, sitting at 500, 3-3 on the year, they're just a real home run hitting team, on the ground game and through the air. And they just, no real signs of consistency. They're a big question mark, and I'm going to talk about them more in depth in my opinionated segment in a bit. And can either of these teams make the playoffs? If the Jets buckle down, get a consistent run game, which I think they've kind of found a little 1-2 punch with Bilal Powell and Isaiah Crowell, they might be able to make a push for a wild card spot. They got a tough schedule coming up, though. Playing hosts for the third straight home game to Minnesota next week. They got to travel out to the Windy City to take on the Bears the following week. And they still have to play New England twice. Jets D looks great. They're forcing turnovers left and right. Picking off Andrew Luck twice early. And Indianapolis defense, and this is why they're losing these high-scoring games. They just don't look comfortable in man coverage. They look much more comfortable in zone defense. They're very weak man-to-man, and they got exposed badly. They just can't cover guys one-on-one. Jets jumped out to a quick 30-13 lead in the second half. And Sam Darnold looked real poised throwing the ball downfield. Hitting a lot of receivers on the day. Last week it was bomb after bomb to Robbie Anderson. This week the Jets just really rode the coattails of the defense. And they beat the Colts. Jets look good. Past few weeks, the Jets look good. Now we're going to talk about the game of the week. Kansas City Chiefs taking on the New England Patriots. Sunday night primetime football. What a shootout, boy. We all expected it coming into Sunday night's game with these two high-powered dynamic offenses. But, Kansas City got off to a slow start, though. Mahomes threw 2 picks early in the first half. Kind of overthrew Kareem Hunt on an easy touchdown. Kind of overthrew Travis Kelce. Looked a little shaky at first. I think it was the nerves, maybe. And New England converted on both turnovers. Pats went into halftime with a 2-score lead. But Patty Showtime, baby, boy, did he bounce back in the second half, throwing 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. Kareem Hunt. We all know what he did last year in New England. He had a monster game. On the ground for 80 yards, 105 yards receiving. He scored on like a 60-yard receiving touchdown. We got to highlight, in my opinion, the most dynamic and explosive player in the NFL, Tyreek Hill. Unquestioned the best performance of the night. 7 catches for 142 yards and 3 scores. And that included a late fourth quarter 60-yard touchdown reception. You can't guard the guy. He's too dangerous. You can't really play man-to-man coverage. And the Pats were fortunate. They really were that he didn't score a 4th touchdown. I forget which quarter it was, but the Pats played a cover zero, all-out blitz, and Mahomes has an arm. He's throwing off his back foot, rolling backwards. Ooh, if he had just gotten an extra yard or two on that pass to Tyreek Hill, he would have scored a 4th touchdown. Might have had 200 yards receiving and 4 scores on the day. New England really controlled the pace for most of this game. Sony Michel, let's just take a quick timeout. Talk about my rookie out of Georgia. 100 yards on the ground. I think the Pats have really found something that they've been lacking in recent years, and that's just a ground and pound running back. He's a physical runner. He's east to west, north to south. Whatever you want. This guy's getting carries. Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels, they seem to trust him. And they're giving him the ball. He scored in each of the last 3 games, and he's rushed for well over 300 yards during that span. And, something we really haven't seen from New England is this really equal distribution of passing from Brady. I'm sorry, I meant to say equal distribution of the run-pass game. I think they ran actually more running plays than passing plays. I think they ran like 3 more run plays than they did passing plays. But anyway, Josh Gordon finally seemed to be getting comfortable in New England, learning the offense. Tom Brady posting on Instagram for the game. Nice little painting of Josh Gordon saying attack. Fans figured he was going to come out targeting Gordon, and he did. The very first play of the game, hit Josh Gordon on an 11-yard slant pass. Targeted him multiple times downfield on deep balls. Really looked like vintage 08 Brady to Moss. Josh Gordon, his size, his speed, his hands, physical receiver. Why not throw him the ball? And they did. Brady threw him a deep 50-yard bomb in the end zone. Would have caught it, but he drew a pass interference instead. Just as good. It was only 1 punt all game in Sunday night. Kansas City exploded in the third quarter. After being down 2 scores at half, they outscored New England 17-3 in the quarter. And like I was saying before, 38 rushing attempts for the Pats, 160 yards on the ground. They ran it more than they threw. And boy, what a show both these teams put on for us. And I really think New England has found a nice combo 1-2 punch in running back position. Sony Michel, ground and pound, control the pace of the game, pick up those yards on the ground. And you got James White, who Brady loves. We all know Brady loves him. Come in for the passing game. Josh McDaniels loves these screen packages, loves to get James White involved. He's getting a lot of catches a game. This New England team can really be something this year. Might not be surprised if I see them in the Super Bowl again. But anyway, that ends our recap of Sunday's games. Now we're just going to hop into my opinionated segment. I'm just going to talk about a few things that I think need to be discussed, and that's the Jets and their playoff hopes, and talk about the Rams and what their possible record is going to be. Start with the Jets. I mentioned before the Jets have 2 tough games coming up, playing host to the Vikings. And, the Vikings have been shaky. I don't know what Dalvin Cook's situation is going to be like for Sunday's game out in MetLife. But if he comes back, this could be a high-scoring game. I think Minnesota, the only thing that they've been lacking this year is true balance on the ground and through the air. Kirk Cousins has just been finding ways to hit Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. Adam Thielen, this man just knows how to play football. He knows how to run routes. He knows how to find those little pockets in zone coverage, and somehow is beating guys in man coverage. Doesn't drop passes. The Jets are going to be in for one there. And I think if the Jets really buckle down and find some consistency, I think like I was saying before, they have a nice run game combo if they can settle in. Sam Darnold, I understand he's a rookie, but he's been playing good. He's been playing really good football the past few weeks. Then they got to travel to Chicago to play that terrifying Bears defense. I don't really know how I feel about these 2 games for the Jets. I think if they could win one of these two games, after that, they still have to play New England twice. I think these next 2 weeks is going to make or break it for the Jets and their playoff chances moving forward. Now, obviously, they're not going to win a division. Best case scenario, is they get a wild card spot. They got to take on the Dolphins. They got to take on the Bills again. There's some games. They got to play the Bills twice. There's some games in their schedule that I think they'll outright win. I think they'll beat the Texans mid-December. I think they'll beat the Bills twice. Then they got to travel to Tennessee. I'm not too keen on Tennessee at all. I think they win that one as well. So this is a Jets team that could really go 9-7, 10-6, and really push for a wild card spot. Sam Darnold versus the Colts, 24 for 30, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. We talked about the equal distribution on the, in the run game. Bilal Powell, 16 carries, 59 yards. Isaiah Crowell, 13 carries, 40 yards versus the Colts. Sub 4 yards per carry averages for both running backs. But the fact is they're getting value. If they can tighten up a little bit in the run game, be more creative, I think that they'll really find a balance. Jermaine Kearse, 9 receptions on the day, 94 yards. Sam Darnold hit Terrell Pryor and Christopher Herndon for a touchdown each. I just want to highlight his stats against Denver, too. Not the best completion percentage in that one for Darnold. Only completed 10 of his passes on 22 attempts. Threw for 198 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. But, anyone that watched this game knew they really didn't need to throw the ball. Again, this 1-2 punch of the run game. Highlighted again, Isaiah Crowell against Denver 2 weeks ago, 15 carries, 219 yards and a touchdown. Bilal Powell, 20 carries, 99 yards. So again, they buckle down, they find their groove. I think these next 2 games against Minnesota and Chicago is really going to make or break it. I think they have, nothing's guaranteed in the NFL, but I don't see them having a problem with Buffalo or Tennessee, Houston. There's winnable games in their schedule. So now let's talk about the Rams. This team is just scary. All right, they're 6-0 on the year. Came out of the year storming, blowing out Oakland Monday night. They rank number 1 in total offense per game, 464 yards. Not really to anybody's surprise who watches their games. They rank number 1 in the league by quite a few yards in rushing yards per game. Again, no surprise there. Todd Gurley, best running back in the NFL, hands down. There's no debate there. 154 yards per game on the ground for the Rams. Yeah, you had the Dallas Cowboys at second at 147, the Panthers at 139. This is a Rams team that if their receivers, right, so you look at their passing game for a second, they're kind of floating around the middle of the pack. They're ranked 13 in passing yards per game, but they got the receiving core to go places. Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks. If these guys can all stay healthy, I think this is undoubtedly the most balanced, explosive, and dangerous offense in a while that we've seen in the NFL. Goff looks incredible. The run game looks incredible. Their passing game looks incredible. Just because they're ranked 13 in the league in passing yards per game. You got teams that aren't going anywhere who just air the ball downfield all game, like Tampa Bay, Atlanta. You know what I mean? So this is a balanced team. We got to talk about their schedule for a second. They have to play 3 of the top 5 rushing defenses in the league the rest of the year. In the Eagles, the Saints, and Chicago. They have to travel down south to New Orleans in a few weeks. First game in November to play the Saints. Expect a high-scoring one in that game. I think whatever defense shows up, if the Saints can shut down Gurley in that game, which, to be quite frank, I don't see them doing, I think the Rams will lose that game. I think that will be their first loss. Their next 2 games coming up are at San Francisco, and then they play host to the Green Bay Packers. Don't think they'll have a problem with either of those two teams. Later in December, this is when the Rams' schedule gets kind of iffy. They got to travel to Chicago on December 9th to take on the Bears, whose run defense looks incredible this year. Again, that's going to be another game. I was curious to see how the Rams are going to play in cold weather. And I got to see that this week at Mile High Stadium. Sunshine, daisies, and roses out there in LA. You're going to be playing a sub-freezing game in Chicago early in December. It's going to be windy. They're going to have to rely on Todd Gurley a lot. And I think this is going to be a very close game. And then the week after, right after that, there's no break. They got to take on the Eagles at home. Rams will play host to the Eagles in that one mid-December. The Eagles' run defense looks good. Nobody wants to run it on them. So I think if the Rams receivers can stay healthy, they have the balanced offense. We all know that. They got a sick pass rush. Their D-line. Wade Phillips, that's my guy. Best defensive coordinator, in my opinion, in the league. Sean McVay. This is why they brought in a young coach. This is a young Rams team, young quarterback, young running back in Gurley. Receivers that are relatively young. Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods have some experience. But for the most part, I think the Rams are really just connecting with Sean McVay. It feels that way. I watched a lot of their behind the scenes, their OTAs during the offseason, because I was really curious about this, youngest coach in the NFL and how the players are responding to him. And they're responding well. They're 6-0. You know what I mean? I think the Rams are the clear front runners without question in the NFC right now. It's just a matter of, are they going 14-2? Are they going 15-1? What's their record going to be? I think the only tough games they got to play, and they still got to play the Chiefs. I didn't even talk about that game. They have a 3-game stretch where they have to travel to New Orleans. Next week, they play host to the Seahawks, who played them in a tight game 2 weeks ago, 2-point game in that one. And then they got to play host to the Chiefs. Primetime game. By the way, the Chiefs are getting a lot of primetime football this year, which I'm loving. I think everybody is. Who doesn't want to see that offense? That is just a scary, scary offense to watch. And I can't wait to watch more of their games. But anyway, I think that 3-game stretch of the Saints, Seahawks, and Chiefs is really going to be a strong test to this young Rams team, young coach Sean McVay, and I want to see how they respond. Now, they got some tough games coming up, but I think without a doubt they're going to be front runners in the NFC, and you can expect nothing less. Let's talk about fantasy football now for a bit and talk about our studs and duds of the week. We're going to start with our studs, standard PPR league. No surprise here. Tyreek Hill, 39 points. We all watched that Sunday night game. 7 catches, 142 yards, 3 touchdowns on 12 targets. Mahomes loves this guy. Andy Reid loves this guy. A lot of teams didn't want to, if you guys know about Tyreek Hill, a lot of teams didn't want to draft him. I got kicked out of Oklahoma State. A lot of teams didn't like him. But you cannot deny the skill, the speed, the cheetah. This man is a pleasure to watch on the football field. He already had 40. First game of the year against the Chargers, he had, 42 fantasy points. It's a ridiculous game in that one. And he comes out this week, 39 points. Our second stud of the week, Saquon Barkley, my man, out of Penn State, 37 points. He had 13 carries for 130 yards and a score. And he had 9 catches for 99 yards. He was targeted 12 times. In a blowout loss to Philly. That was the only bright spot for the Giants. It's been the only bright spot all year. Forget Odell Beckham. Saquon Barkley has been the focal point of this offense. He's been the only thing going for the Giants this year. If you guys have him on your fantasy roster, don't even think about trading him. He's going to get the points every week. The volume's going to be high. The targets are going to be there. They're going to give him the ball on the ground. Expect big things for years to come from this man. Todd Gurley, no surprise there, coming in at third with 36 points. We mentioned before, 28 carries for 208 yards on the ground, 2 scores. He only caught 2 passes for 17 yards. I mean, they just really fed him the ball. When he was in the game, he wasn't really involved in the passing game. I think in a PPR league, sometimes we tend to lean towards running backs that are used more in the passing game. Guys like Melvin Gordon, Alvin Kamara. But Gurley gets it done on the ground, so there's no need to worry there. Best back in football without question. Melvin Gordon. I mean, this guy is right there behind Todd Gurley. I mean, I put Gurley on his own plateau, his own tier, and right below that, right below that, you got Melvin Gordon. Not far behind. He put up 35 fantasy points on the day. 18 carries, 132 yards, 3 scores. 2 catches, 18 yards through the air. Again, this was a blowout. There's really no need for LA to involve him that much in the passing game. Just kind of fed him the ball, chewed up the clock. That was a blowout game, And surprise of the week, Albert Wilson for the Dolphins. 6 catches, 155 yards, and 2 scores. I mean, he came out of nowhere. Sneaking in at number 5 with 33 points. And we can't have a fantasy football stud section without my man, Adam Smooth. Adam Thielen, 11 catches, 123 yards, and a touchdown. Targeted 15 times. Hauling in 29.3 fantasy points. I mean, this guy's going to get the job done week in and week out. And I'll be shocked the first game he doesn't get over 100 yards receiving. I mean, boy, that's going to be something. But, I mean, this guy is on pace for some ridiculous records to be set this year. Like I said earlier, it's 6 weeks through the league. He's already been targeted 81 times. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And unfortunately, we got to talk about our duds of the week. It pains me to say it, but A.J. Green. I get it. Okay, he got 15 points. 7 catches for 85 yards. It just feels like the deep ball, the red zone, where Andy Dalton wants to throw the ball for touchdowns, to seem to be Tyler Boyd. And, I traded A.J. Green earlier in the year. A little bit concerned about him. I mean, great receiver. There's no question about that. It's just the targets are kind of there. It's just he doesn't seem to be in the form that he has been in the past. And this has kind of been a reoccurring theme for AJ so far this year. I mean, he had one game, I think he had like 3 touchdowns. I mean, he'll be consistent, but don't expect him to blow up for like 25 points in 1 week. I don't think that's really going to happen. Other dud of the week, Christian McCaffrey. Boy, I mean, he didn't really get any work against Washington this week. 8 carries for 20 yards. 7 catches for 46 yards. They just couldn't get him involved at all. Ron Rivera, before the season started, talked about getting Christian McCaffrey well over 300 carries. Don't see that happening this year. Other dud, TJ Yeldon. 8 carries, 41 yards. And again, this was a blowout. Jacksonville was down a lot of points. They had to abandon the run game. And we kind of saw that in Cincinnati, which, to be honest, I don't know why Cincinnati. I don't want to get sidetracked, but I got to bring this up. I don't know what Marvin Lewis's problem is. I don't know why he's still coaching. I think a lot of people have wondered that. I mean, I don't even remember the last time Cincinnati's won a playoff game. And they just abandoned the run game. I mean, you have one of like these most dynamic young running backs in the league in Joe Mixon. And they just kind of seem to abandon the run game in a close game. This Joe Mixon is physical. He's shifty. He knows how to find spots. I mean, got to give him the ball more. But anyway, back to TJ Yeldon. Yeah, only 8 carries, 41 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 catches, 29 yards through the air. They just really didn't get him involved in the passing game or anything. And like I said, Dante Moncrief did not catch a pass. You're getting blown out 24-0 at halftime. You know you're going to throw the ball. And Dante Moncrief did not catch a pass. You throw Jamal Charles in there at wide receiver. I mean, it's ridiculous. Mike Evans, another dud. 4 catches, 58 yards. I mean, fantasy owners expected Mike Evans to be wow, producing big points this week in Atlanta. A high over-under in that one. A lot of points are going to be scored, which there was. But Mike Evans just didn't get the work done. Again, 4 catches, 58 yards, no scores. Jameis Winston threw 4 touchdowns to 4 different receivers, didn't throw one to Mike Evans. And unfortunately, my letdown of the week, Jarvis Landry. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. We all know what Jarvis Landry is capable of. Okay, he's a reception machine. I get that. But you got to understand, this is a rookie quarterback, Baker Mayfield. He's got a lot of juice in his arm. He's really throwing the ball. I don't know if that's playing a factor in if Landry's got to cut routes short or he's got to change up his route running, stuff like that. I haven't watched enough of Baker Mayfield and Jarvis Landry yet because, quite frank, these Browns games have been ugly. But he was targeted 9 times, which is concerning. The volume is there. He's targeted 9 times. He only caught the ball twice for 11 yards. I think that all came in the first half. I think first quarter, actually. So it's going to be interesting to see moving forward how this Baker Mayfield-Jarvis Landry relationship develops. But anyway, that covers our fantasy football segment. And now we're just going to run up the episode. We're just going to run down the AFC and the NFC. So real quick, we'll start with the AFC. AFC East, we got the Pats sitting top at 4-2, excuse me. And this is going to be an interesting division because, like we were talking about before, the Jets have potential to really make a push for a wild card spot. Okay, the Dolphins are sitting at 4-2 as well. You got a competitive AFC North. And quite frankly, the AFC South is competitive. I mean, there are so many teams right now that look like wild card teams. I think the Jets and the Dolphins have potential out of the East. Out West, I think without question the Chargers are definitely going to finish around 10-6, maybe even 11-5. And then the North, gritty, physical. Bengals sitting top 4-2, Ravens right behind at 4-2, and the Steelers 3-2. Browns sitting at the bottom at 2-3. It's good to see them in the win column. But this is good. The AFC North is really going to come down to a Week 17, like it always does. And you could quite possibly, and I don't even want to rule this out because this is my prediction, I really think we're going to see 3 teams out of the AFC North making the playoffs this year. If the Chargers don't continue their surge. I think if the Chargers kind of fall behind a little, lose some divisional games, slip up, I think you'll see the Steelers and Ravens or the Bengals, whichever, who knows who's going to win that division. Those teams are going to make the playoffs. I think the Bengals are going to win this division. And between the Ravens and the Steelers, I think the Ravens look like the better football team right now. They're playing more physical. They look to be getting the run game back. The defense is looking outstanding. I think this is going to come down to Bengals-Ravens coming out of the North and the AFC West Chiefs-Chargers. So it's going to be interesting to see. And then the AFC South, we got the Titans. We got a 3-way tie for first right now. We got the Titans, losers of 2 straight at 3-3. The Texans, winners of 3 straight at 3-3. And you got the Jags, who lost back-to-back blowout games at 3-3. I'm hoping if Leonard Fournette comes back, if they figure out this pass game with Blake Bortles, the Jaguars climb back up, see a resurgence in their offense, the defense steps up. I hope, please, see them finish 11-5, make the playoffs. The Titans just don't look consistent enough to make the playoffs, and neither do the Texans. Now we're going to move to the NFC real quick. Got to start in the terrible trash can division, the NFC East. You've got the Redskins sitting atop, looking pretty at 3-2. Then you got the Cowboys right behind at 3-3, and the Eagles at 3-3. Got the Giants in the chum bucket at 1-5, losers of 3 straight. You rule the Giants out. You can rule them out since week 1. I think the Redskins and the Eagles are the two front runners to win this division. I don't think either of these teams, I don't think any team for that matter out of the NFC East is going to be in contention for a wild card spot. I think that's going to be going to the AFC North, both wild card spots. I think the Packers and the Vikings or the Bears, similar to the AFC North, is going to make the playoffs. So you look at the NFC East, you got Washington. You got Dallas just coming off a blowout win. That really shot some life into their season. Boy, the Eagles kind of look, they're seesawing all year. You know, one week they look good, other week, you know what I mean? So it's like they look great against New York. Carson Wentz looked great throwing the football, converting when it counted. They got to figure out a run game. You know, Wendell Smallwood. I don't know. You know, Corey Clement. We'll see. I think right now, as it stands, I like Washington to come out as winners in the NFC East. Go out west. Not much conversation there. I think the Rams run away with that one. I think we all know that. Seattle might make a push for the wild card. The 49ers and Arizona, both with one win apiece. Don't see anything coming out of them. Then we move to the NFC North. Very competitive division so far. Now we got the Bears at 3-2, the Vikings at 3-2, and the Packers at 2-2. Vikings and Packers both tied each other earlier in the year. You know, Aaron Rodgers looked good last night. Didn't have a chance to cover that Monday night game, unfortunately, but Aaron Rodgers leading the pack downfield. Devontae Adams tying touchdown late in the fourth. You know, I mean, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, Hall of Fame quarterback. Can never really rule out Aaron Rodgers. This Vikings pass game is just too damn dangerous to rule out, and the Bears defense looks stout. You know, it's possible as of now we might see three teams out of the NFC North. You know, and then we move down south, and this is my least favorite division in football because it's just such a passing division. And you rarely see any run game from any of these teams. And I've always hated it. But anyway, the Saints sitting atop 4-1. They look great. They look like right now the only team that I think can contest the Rams. And we might see them in the NFC Championship game. The two teams play each other later in the year. Might get a little sneak preview of the NFC Championship game. And you got Carolina sitting right below them at 3-2. And then towards the bottom, you got Tampa Bay at 2-3 and Atlanta at 2-4. You know, I think Tampa Bay and Atlanta aren't going to be playoff contenders at all. Defenses are just too weak. Carolina could make a push. They do not look consistent at all this year. They got to figure out a balance. They got to figure something out with their receivers. I mean, Devin Funchess can't be your number one. Expect to make a push in the playoffs. As great as Cam Newton is, I don't see him carrying this team to a point where they'll be contenders in the playoffs. So I really like New Orleans to edge out this division, going quite possibly 13-3, at worst 12-4. But anyway, that really wraps up our first episode. This was a lot of fun. I can't wait to do this next week. Boy, oh boy. But before we end real quick, I'm just going to preview all the games for you guys next week. We got the Broncos taking on the Cardinals in Arizona. Titans traveling to LA to take on the Chargers. Panthers heading to Lincoln Financial Field to play the Eagles. Minnesota heading out to MetLife to take on the Jets. Bills playing the Colts. Patriots traveling to Chicago to take on the Bears. And the Browns playing the Buccaneers. Not going to watch that game. Texans at Jacksonville, a little divisional game there. Hopefully we see Leonard Fournette back in that one. We don't know yet, though. And we got Detroit at Miami, New Orleans at Baltimore. That's going to be a great game. Got Dallas, divisional game, taking on Washington at FedEx Field. We got the Rams heading a little bit up north, take on San Francisco 49ers. And game of the week. We got the Bengals at Arrowhead. Sunday Night Football. I mean, this is going to be a great game. I don't know if it's going to be as great as last Sunday night, Chiefs, Pats, but boy, this is going to be a great game. Two of my favorites coming out of the AFC. They both look hot. Unfortunate losses for both of them this past Sunday, but great football teams nonetheless. And then Monday night, got a bum fest down in Atlanta. Can't wait to see the ratings for that game. We got the Giants taking on the Falcons. I don't know what to expect in that one. But it's going to be a great week in football. But anyway, again, that wraps it up. I hope you guys all enjoyed the show. And I'll see you guys back for another episode next Tuesday.